Hello and welcome to the CoCovidVid show. My name is Cody and I will be your host today. Today I am with a physical education teacher of 18 years. He's been teaching at Miles Macdonell Collegiate. His name is Tim Au. He's my cousin, full disclosure. Thanks for joining me today, Tim.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how long you've been teaching and why it is you decided to pursue teaching in the first place.
It was always an interest of mine. It's my 18th year of teaching, as you mentioned. In high school, one of my phys ed teachers pulled me aside and asked me if I ever considered becoming a phys ed teacher. I said, maybe a little bit, but I'm not sure what I want to do. I've had some good phys ed teachers in my life growing up. I think they were very positive influences for me. I really enjoyed being in the gym. So I thought this could have been a career path for me, but I wanted to explore many options. I had many interests. And I remember trying to walk onto the U of W team in 1997 there. The first practice there, coach pulled me aside and asked me what I thought. And I said, I feel like I'm a little bit out of place, right? So, he gave me some encouraging words and I decided not to stick around with the team because I saw my future as a person, I guess, chasing volleyballs in the gym for 5 years, and that's not something I really wanted to do. So I decided to coach, right? I went back to my high school and I helped out with the team, really enjoyed working with kids, and I felt that I could still be involved in the sport in a different way. So my second year of university, I switched everything and I went into education and I was never looked back.
I noticed that you do a lot of community work outside of school with your students and with your community. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I guess volleyball is a big part of my life, that sport. So I was in university and I was coaching these teams from some of the schools that I went to, right? I was giving back to the schools that I worked with. I kind of had this vision with some other teachers about growing the game a bit. I wanted to provide opportunities that wasn't really there for me as a kid. There were volleyball club programs kind of popping up in different schools in different areas of the city, but I wanted to provide an opportunity that was very inclusive. We started a club. We started back in 2001, and we're still kind of going strong today.
What's the name of that club? Or
it's a Winman Volleyball Club. So it's short for Winnipeg, Manitoba Volleyball Club.
Nice. I've also noticed that you do a lot of fishing and ice fishing in particular as well, and that you've involved students and members of the community as some of those activities. So could you talk a little bit about that? I've always found that very fascinating.
So I've been really heavily involved in volleyball for most of my life, but I found that I work with a very small portion of the community, right? It's elite athletes usually, and I really wanted to be more inclusive and do something for my school that hit a different population of the school. We started a fishing club, and really at first it was to get kids involved in the sport of fishing and just to get them out. And we wanted to grow the idea a bit more. We started teaching about conservation. We taught about how to tie your lures, because some students never had the opportunity to go fishing, right? So we wanted to give them an opportunity, an activity that they can do in their own community, close to home, that was relatively inexpensive. But we also want to teach them about, conservation and the environment. So, in May, when the fishing season opens, I take students out to Lockport, Manitoba after school. And we spend an evening fishing. Then we clean the shorelines after, right? So One of the biggest lessons is that we may go fishing on a Thursday, clean the shoreline, and we might go back to the same spot the following Monday, the following week, and it's full of litter again, right? So it is a huge lesson that I was able to show the students and the impact. And then we talked about the positive impact we can have by cleaning up and maybe educating others about that, right? So yeah, it's been neat, and we started doing a fish-a-thon fundraiser. We call it the Miles Macdonell Angling for a Cure, the Fishing for a Cure Derby.
Very nice.
And we take pledges from friends and family members, and I have prizes from local sponsors: the most fish caught, the biggest fish caught, smallest fish caught, most species caught. We just come up with different categories, and it's just a fun way to end the year. And it's just to reward them for all their efforts. So we're also raising money, right? And when we have local sponsors, we're able to give 100% of the proceeds to charities of our choice. So teaching a little bit of philanthropy as well, right? So
on that note, I guess, let's talk a little bit about maybe how some of those events and some of those initiatives have been affected by this year in particular, in 2020, with the pandemic, with just everything that's been happening this year. How have you managed to be able to, both as a teacher and a leader in the community, how have you been able to keep some of that going in the classroom? How have you been able to teach your regular curriculum with this new normal that we're all in right now, especially as a phys ed teacher?
You know what? I'll talk curricular first. Things have changed in the schools. We have some really good protocols in place. But I find that it's very militant, maybe. I'm teaching grade 9s this year, and the grade 9s are super well behaved. They're waiting outside in the door. They line up. I walk them in. I walk them to the sanitization station. We walk straight to our classroom, and they stay there all morning. Mm-hmm. And our teachers rotate through, so we don't have a lot of movement and cross-contamination with other cohorts, right? So the 21 students that I may work with in this class, they only know 3 teachers, because we're the only teachers that work with them all day. So yeah, there's not a lot of life in the school. Like sometimes the hallways were loud before and a little bit chaotic. There's none of that, right? Our school is a school of 1,200 students. We have a small physical building. I remember how intimidating it was the first time I was here and trying to walk through an area called the tunnel. And it is like, we're like salmon. There's a fishing analogy for you, but like salmon trying to upstream, right? Like everyone's shoulder to shoulder. It's completely different. In regards to the curriculum, I've been trying to do as much as possible. I'm following the public health guidelines, the return to play guidelines for each sport, and doing what we can. So we've done a lot of individual sports like tennis and badminton, pickleball, where you can be physically distanced. We're doing some fitness videos that we're doing because I want to teach kids,
Are you actually still in the gym area, or are you? Yeah.
Yeah, we're fortunate. Because I know some schools, they've repurposed their gyms to be classrooms, right? But we still are in the gym, and I think that's great because the kids want to be active. We did volleyball this year as a team activity because we can be physically distanced in volleyball. And the kids enjoyed it. They loved it. They loved the opportunity to play as a team again, right? So they are missing that. So yeah, we are doing activities as best as normal, right? But we're not getting the full effect.
And what about your charity work that you're talking about? Has any of that, have you been able to maintain any of that this year, or has that just been kind of written off for 2020?
Yeah, so last spring we didn't do the angling club because we usually start in the spring or right after spring break. We couldn't do any of that because school was remote at that point. This year, my school division has decided to not have any extracurricular activities for this year. So
as somebody who's been involved with kids for so long now and seeing the communities and seeing I imagine the relationships that the students have among each other, have with their students, and they build through school and through all that extracurricular stuff. Have you noticed an impact on that this year? Have you noticed just socially what kind of impact it's been having on the students?
We had a spirit week, and I teach grade 9s, and I found that the participation and buy-in is kind of low.
Yeah.
The second one, we had more participation, right? Only because I figured in grade 9s, their first year at the school, they're not sure how to act. In a normal year, they would have been able to walk the halls and see that this is our school culture, that we accept this, that everyone dresses up. They haven't seen that, and I think that they don't know how to act, right? So it is a balance for sure. But I can see that the students socially are impacted because I know of some grade 9s who may have come from a smaller school and not know many people, and they're assigned in a classroom with 20 other students that they don't know. And it's difficult to get to know as well because we're not doing a lot of group work at all. So it is different for sure.
So on that note, with this year and how everything's been changing, what were some of the first signs you noticed professionally or personally that COVID was changing everything and that this year was going to be a different one?
Well, it's funny. I remember hearing about this COVID, and then I remember seeing a news release that it has landed in BC. There were a couple cases, and it just so happened that at the end of January, I accompanied my daughter and her ringette team to BC. And then, jokingly, I have a photo. My daughter brought a mask. She happened to have a medical mask that she took from our experience last summer when we traveled to Switzerland. We did a
Oh, wow.
family vacation to Switzerland, and we stayed at a Japanese boarding school, which I accompanied 4 students to from my school. It's just an exchange program that we do every year, which I miss because it's something that we haven't been able to do.
Sure.
But anyhow, my daughter had this mask and she wore it, and I thought, man, she's being silly here, right? But if I think about the reasons why she had the mask, you know, the Japanese students at this boarding school, whenever they were sick, they put on a mask so that other people wouldn't get sick.
Right.
And Western culture here, we may not think, like, we thought that was kind of odd, probably, but the Asian countries, they knew that's how they protect others. So anyhow, she wore this mask in BC, and she's sitting in the airport wearing it as, I don't know if she's being a goof, like her dad would be. Now, if I look at it, it was pretty normal, right? Because even at the BC airport, there are several people wearing masks as well.
Right.
And that's what I noticed. I was like, this is interesting. And then if we fast forward to March, as we hear more and more cases popping up, the NBA shutting down, and then maybe the NHL. I happened to be at school. It would have been Thursday, the March 12th, and we were hosting basketball provincials. And so I was the host, and I was getting the gym cleaned up. I was going to be on the PA introducing the athletes and getting the programs all set up. It was going to be a big event. And somebody sent me a text message saying, check your email, and this was at 4:45, and people were showing up at the gym for 5. And it was from the Manitoba High Schools Athletic Association, and it said that due to the health concerns, we are shutting provincials down.
Wow.
So I didn't know what to do. I had to walk into the hallway, and I had to explain to these athletes that the provincial championships have been canceled and they're to go home. There's a lot of confusion about it. And that's when it felt real to me. I knew something was wrong at that point. I went into my office and I kind of choked up, and I might have shed a couple tears because I thought about these kids just confused because we had practices going on in the gym at the same time. And I remember telling my varsity boys and varsity girls coach, who was prepping their teams for that weekend as well, I choked back some tears. I was pretty upset because I felt like, wow,
Yeah.
this is real. This is happening. And I didn't know the extent of it, right?
And that was just the tip of the iceberg when everything was kind of showing up.
It was, yeah. And that night, because I was going home now at 5:30 versus 10:30 at night, I said, well, I'm gonna go to Costco and pick up some groceries. And I just remember seeing the panic, and there's a lot of people loading up and stuff. And I thought, holy smokes, like, what is happening here? So yeah, that's when it hit me that this was all real. Like I said, I was upset, and I was upset because I was disappointed for the kids. But I also knew what's going on and what's happening. It was just scary, right? So I was a little emotional that day because I wasn't sure what was going on.
Do you remember how the students reacted? Like you said, they were confused. Like, was there any anger? Was there resentment, or did?
Yeah, the kids were confused, I think, when I first told them. That the next day was Friday the 13th, March 13th. And more announcements were coming from the government. The Prime Minister was on the news daily, and the next week we still had school. But every day I noticed that people were taking it seriously, and there's less people in class every day. So and then the school board was making some quick decisions, and then we realized that the Minister of Education and the Premier, closed schools to remote learning at that point, right? So it was a couple weeks of panic there and confusion, and having to figure things out. I would say that as a positive, as a teacher, I think that it allowed us to relook at our curriculum. I was comfortable delivering courses online already. I did teach a course online before. If anything, it allowed me to relook at some of my units that I was teaching and look at different ways to teach it and engage students remotely.
I remember around that time, there was just a lot of confusion from parents and about school boards and decisions and what teachers knew and what teachers didn't know. And I just remember thinking, it's like, everybody's just trying to figure this out right now. And there's no, it may feel like it's super unorganized from the outside. And to some degree, I'm sure it is, but rightfully so. Everybody's just trying to figure it out, and it's nothing we've ever dealt with before. And I always had faith that we had the right people in the right places, that things would work out in the end. And I'm glad you were one of them.
Yeah, I guess so, right? And that's the thing, right? There's no playbook, as you said, and no one knows, right? So we're trying to make decisions in the best way possible. And yeah, it is upsetting. I know, like, my daughter, she bawled and cried when she found out that she couldn't go to her ringette Western National Championships, right? So I think kids, they see that there's some benefits to the life that they knew, some positives, I mean, and they can see how it could be taken away. If anything, they may learn and gain a better appreciation of those things, but it is upsetting for sure.
Do you think that it's enough of an impact that it'll have a lasting long-term effect from this year, or do you think we can make up for it in future years with going back to normal, getting the old socialization and back together? Do you think that'll make up for it, or are we gonna have to make an extra effort to really try to build that culture again among students?
I think that, like, a vaccine is coming. That is our hope right now.
Yeah.
That we can return to normal. Because I do believe right now there's transmission happening, either in the community or in schools right now. We're wearing masks, but we're doing our best that we can. But people are still getting sick, right? And I understand that we want to make sure that everyone's safe. Until we get to a point where we can take part in some of these activities again, go to concerts, go to Jets games, Bomber games, etc. Yeah, I think we can get to that point. I think that is kind of like a pause. That's the way I look at it. I think It's a pause. We're able to get back to what we considered normal before.
On that note, do you feel like this year could have any positive outcomes? Is there anything positive that might have come out from this pandemic on the culture and on the students?
I think there is a good lasting impact on understanding what we've had and have gained a better appreciation. I see a lot of people being active in the outdoors, looking for things to do. These hiking trails are full. Ice fishing is something that I've been, like I said, passionate about for many years. When I first started, there wasn't a lot of people who did it, but I was in Cabela's last night at the in-store pickup, and it was full of people in line buying equipment
for ice fishing.
Ice fishing, right? So, one of my fishing spots that I've been going to for years, I showed up at 7 a.m. a couple of weeks ago, and I couldn't even find parking. There was it was that nice out. Everyone's walking out onto the ice. I'm going to estimate 400 groups out there. It was just packed. And the weekend before, there was 10 of us. I think things are exploding. I know Birds Hill Park is full of people hiking the trails. Before, you wouldn't have people, necessarily taking time to do things like that, right? Going on hikes with the family. Because we are so busy, right? That everyone's going, taking their kids to their activities, but we don't have that stuff right now, right? So we are reconnecting with family, but we're also appreciating what we've had. I find my students have been wonderful. My students have been wonderful this year. And I think it's because that when I am able to provide them with an activity, they're very appreciative of it, because they realize, wow, this is a treat for us. They're not taking things for granted. I think that's a long-lasting effect, I hope, is that we've gained the appreciation of the little things. In
the summer, I noticed a lot more people were being active outdoors and hiking trails and stuff locally in Manitoba. We just a lot more people traveling within the province, camping. I feel like a lot more people were camping than normally go camping. And that seems really cool. That seems like a real positive impact, and everybody getting to know the outdoors and the environments a little bit better. In the winter, it's a little trickier here, but ice fishing seems like a good alternative. I've never been ice fishing before. Maybe you should take me ice fishing. That'd be awesome.
For sure.
Yeah. It's really cool to see that some of the people have been taking this time to explore new activities and try new things and getting out there still in the midst of this weird, crazy pandemic that we're in the middle of.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thanks for your time, Tim. Thanks for coming by. Thanks for having this chat with me. Hope you had a good time.
Yeah, my pleasure. I think it's been fun. It's nice to talk about things, right? So.
Well, that's it for today's episode of the CoCovidVid show. I'd like to thank Tim again for dropping by, having a wonderful conversation. If you haven't checked it out yet, please check out last week's holiday special. I think you'll really enjoy that one. I put a lot of work into that. If you like this, hit like. And if you'd like to see more content like this, hit subscribe. And if you'd like to get in contact with me, leave a comment down below or send me an email at cody@cocovidvid.com. Thanks for watching. See you next time.